So my favorite part about using AI is when you set it like it creates the slide for you. It will underline the wrong word and you can't get rid of it. Yeah, that wasn't me. That was AI. That's your AI error of the day. Just throwing that out there. Sorry, this is already recording. I should have started saying those things before we started recording. Um, really quickly, let me introduce myself, and then I'm going to introduce my favorite rule about conferences. My name is Erek Engar. I am the Assistive Technology Coach in Davis School District. I see a few faces that I know, a few people that I love. Thank you for being here. I see lots of people that I don't know. Thanks for being here. I'm going to introduce the topic and then give you the rule. So we are going to talk about the quality indicators of assistive technology. What these are, there's a whole series of them, and they're basically a rubric for how you provide assistive technology services, devices, assessments, et cetera, in your district. It is very district focused. If you're like, I'm not really a district person, so I'm a little concerned how this might fit me. But we're also going to do a choose your own adventure, right? So you're gonna select the topics that we actually look at. Because there's 8 areas, I'll give a brief overview of them, but we're not going to dive into all of them. So we're going to go with voting. So sometimes you can get voted off the island if it's not your topic. When that comes up, here's the rule. It's the rule of 2 feet. Everybody has 2 feet pretty much in this room. If it's not your session, I promise you, I'm not going to feel bad if you're like, I'm going to go find another place that's actually going to give me what I need. Okay. There is no, at any point in time, the rule of 2 feet applies. You don't even have to peace out. You can just, you can. If you go out with flair, I will recognize it. So, okay. Any questions to start with? I'll give a brief awkward pause while people decide for a second. Okay, so we're gonna jump in. Yeah, this is my favorite thing of all time. It doesn't come off either. And could I have redone the slide? I could have, but it didn't. Okay, so let's talk about what the quality indicators are. Is there a way for me to hide this thing? There we go. Nope. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Nope. Hold on. Admit. So it's only showing what's on that computer up on the top, right? Oh, because somebody unplugged me. Oh, okay. So
what do you need to have?
See this slide right here? It's not showing on there.
Yo, Austin.
What's up?
We need this to look like this.
It was plugged in over here, but I got unplugged. Yes.
He is the sharer.
I am the sharer. I had this all working. People came and touched stuff, guys. It's not me.
We do control.
This never hurts. I'm going to tell you. 80%. Often doesn't show. There we go. That's good enough, right? Okay. Back of the room, you guys got it. If you got glasses, you're good. If you're old like me and you don't have glasses because you're too proud to go in, then I'll auditorily give you all the information. So these are the 8 indicators for assistive technology services. Number 1 is the consideration of AT needs. Now, is anybody in here classroom teacher? Raise them proud, high. No? Nobody? Speech pathologists? I knew you guys would be here to represent. Occupational therapists? Wow, in mass. Physical therapists? Way to go. Yeah, and he was so happy. He was so happy to be the only one raising his hand. Other? Okay, other, you're my people. Okay, so on the IEPs, just give me kind of some feedback on if this is how most of your teams that you've been on consider AT needs. Is there anything this kid needs for AT? Yeah, I don't think so. Okay, we've considered it, right? That's probably the most common way that AT gets considered on IEPs. I will say I think people do a better job than that. It's just not part of a conversation. So again, there's going to be 5 or 6 different areas we can look at in that consideration of AT needs. Like, do we have a dedicated way to document that consideration? Do we have a way to do this? By the way, all of these slides are shared, so I'm all for taking pictures. I just assume people are taking pictures of me. It happens all the time, you guys. Um, by the way, I'm a little punch drunk. It's okay. I didn't sleep very well last night, and it's been a hard week. So there's rubrics under each of these that kind of go through and define what those are going to look like. So the next part is the assessment of AT needs. How does your district do at assessing what students need for assistive technology? Again, that consideration is part of it and documentation of it. The assessment piece is one step further, right? So how do we actually go in and test things? How do we show efficacy or non-efficacy? How do we show what the causes were for abandonment, those kinds of things? I'm just gonna play my hand right now. Assistive technology on the IEP is probably the most relevant of all of these, unless you're like a leader of a district, an LEA, or you're making decisions for broad groups. This how we document assistive technology on the IEP part is probably the thing we're going to do, but don't worry, there's a vote coming up. You're going to get to vote. After the AT on the IEP is evaluation of effectiveness. So how do we show that the student needs it, that it's making a difference, or that it's not making a difference, so that we can then go back and reconsider what that student needs. Assistive technology in transition covers not just transition plans for post-high school, but transitions between schools and locations. So when students change grades, et cetera. The next one is administrative support for assistive technology. So how do you build within your district more support from the administrative side for assistive technology, for purchasing, for implementation, for professional development, which is that last one, professional development. How are you doing at providing professional development within your district? Okay, so that's a really brief overview of what each of those are. So here's what I would like to do. I gotta go this way. Okay. So each of those areas are on this QR code. It's a Microsoft form because we were told we had to use Microsoft Forms. And what you can do is you can just drag and drop, and you can prioritize what order we want to talk about those in. And I'll be honest, we're probably only going to do a few of them. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to pull up the surveys, the matrix. We're going to have the group here fill it out. And then we're going to pull up that data to say, hey, how are we as a group doing? Okay. So like I said, each one of them is in a matrix. Buried way deep in the QIAT resources on their website is Google Forms for these. I've linked to them, so you don't have to go find them. But again, we had to put them into a Microsoft form for this location. So take a minute, vote for your favorite. I am going to pull up. Oh. And I might need to stop the share, come back to the share. Share this. So you're going to put them in the order that you want. So make the first one the one you want to talk about the most. Make the last one the one you really do not care about and you don't want to talk about it today. So we've got 14 people who have responded so far. Whoops, cancel. Don't need to print that. Is there a way to move the closed captioning? There we go. All right. Ooh, we got assessment coming in hot, consideration. AT on the IEP just made a jump though, as we're watching this in real time, the data come in. And we should be able to get to two of these. So let's see. There we go. Ooh, sir, this is a pretty even spread, you guys. This is not the bell curve I expected. Okay, anybody not get a chance to vote yet? Working on the last minute of it. We'll see if we'll See if we can get somebody to pull ahead. I don't know if you can vote twice. I don't remember how I set up the poll. So if you're like, oh, my favorite thing isn't at the top, we'll probably get to the top two though. Okay. Go in and rig the vote, right? If you do you have a top one? Okay. Okay. Because the next ones are kind of a tie for three. So I think that puts you over the top on the like the on those ones. Okay. So now that everybody's got their poll um, fingers happy and ready, we're going to do kind of the same thing. So let's go to assessment of AT needs. So back to my slide deck. Is not letting me share like my whole desktop. Oh, maybe it will here. If I go here, desktop, there we go. Now share. Then I won't have to keep switching. Okay, so what did I say? What was the top one? Assessment? No, assessment. Okay. So here is assessment of AT needs. I'll make it bigger for everybody. And then really what we're gonna do, don't overthink them. They're kind of wordy. And I'll be honest, the way they wrote them does not roll off the tongue. So don't overthink them. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna fill out this rubric, and you can fill it out from your perspective or like your district perspective. It doesn't really matter. The most interesting part is when we pull up the data and we talk about what's what. So I will say, in the state of Utah right now, the assistive technology team leaders do meet almost monthly, doesn't always happen monthly, to review one of these areas. And then we make small improvements each time, right? Because as you're going through these, you're going to notice there's a whole lot of things that I could be improving on, but that's too much work for any one person to do. So I'm going to watch for people's phones. As soon as I see people have got logged in, then I'm going to pull up the actual survey myself too. So we can go through and I'll fill it out as we go through it. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Couple last ones. You know what? You gotta, yeah, sorry. So let's do this. Let's go here, here. Um, assessment. Um, collect responses. Somebody forgot to click a box, you guys. Don't tell anybody. Download. And in real time, we're gonna fix the slide, even though I could have fixed that first slide, you guys. Could have fixed it. I didn't. Try this one. So assessment actually it worked that time. Yeah, sorry. I knew there was going to be one that I forgot to click the box on for sharing. They used to have in our district, here's fun sports story for everybody. They used to have it sort of default to open, but then some dad got his son's computer and he just pulled up like the OneDrive, which is like the Google Drive, and he just searched the word passwords. And he found a whole bunch of documents that people had just shared publicly with like all of their passwords, like teachers, etc. Yeah. So then they had to lock everything down. Don't ever label your documents passwords. That's a bad label for any document, especially if you're putting passwords in there. um, yeah, and that's a hard way to find out that you're not doing things very securely. Okay, everybody get in. That one work a lot better. Make everybody feel happier. Okay, so let's pull it up and close that. Close that. And here we go. So the procedures. So procedures for all aspects of all AT assessments are clearly defined and consistently applied. I will tell you right now in our district that procedures, whoops, I got to go to preview. There we go. In my district right now, we're at a 3. And I'm just going to tell you honestly why. So our procedures are defined, but only certain people really use them. There's a few teachers that will assess, but I promise you, like most of our mild moderate students have a reading disability, like just by numbers. And we have very few people who know how to test and see what's going to be effective for them for assistive technology for read aloud tools, right? It's not very hard to do. That's the thing I keep telling people, like if I can do it, anybody can do it. Um, but not everybody in our district can. There is a place for notes and evidence. Don't worry about filling those out. The next question, AT assessments are conducted by a team with the collective knowledge skills needed to determine the possible AT solutions that address the needs and abilities of the student, yada, yada, yada. I will say on this one that we're going to mark a 4 for me. Why? Because every single one of our school teams are assistive technology specialists up until the point that they're not, right? And that's different for every single team. But every single team knows the student. Every single team has some level of assistive technology ability to like figure out what's going on. So we don't go out just as a specialized team of people to assess. Okay. My next question is, all AT assessments include functional assessments in the student's customary environments. And customary environments is the hard one because it's time consuming. So I'm actually going to mark us at a 3. So functional components of AT assessments are sometimes conducted in the student's customary environments. Like we don't hit like a lot of the gen ed settings, I'll be honest, but we're working on it. Okay. AT assessments, including needed trials, are completed within reasonable timelines. I will tell you on this one, because we are actually pretty lucky and we have a lot of everything that we need at our fingertips. And that they include at least initial trials. Next question, recommendations from AT assessments are based on data about the student. And again, that customary environments piece comes back to bite me a little bit. They're sometimes based on data about the student performance. Yeah, we're back to sometimes on that one. Okay. Number 11, the assessment provides the IEP team with clearly documented recommendations. So does somebody write up what we know about what from this student? And I will say on the ours, we're actually, again, around a 3 because we don't always do a whole write-up on every single assistive technology evaluation. By the way, assessment has the longest survey. I'll tell you that. Like we did pick the longest one to go with. AT needs are reassessed anytime the student changes. That's just going to be on our typical timeline of a year. So AT is frequently monitored for progress on that one. And if you happen to know like which district you're in, you can fill this one out. I don't think it's required though. Oh no, it is required. So if it is, you can always just put other. So AT team leader from Davis. There we go. And then I'm going to hit submit. And I'm going to go back. And we have 10 responses so far. So we're going to take a look at what this does for us. I'm going to get rid of that. There's still a few coming in because it keeps redrawing the graph every time somebody enters stuff in. So you can see as a whole, like here, and I think this is representative of the state, right? Because I bet you we have people from a lot of different locations in here because you're not sitting all together. So I know you don't know each other that well. So I'm assuming we have a number of districts represented here. So it looks like as a whole, do we need to let people in? Thanks.
Only because we're being nice.
Only because we're being nice, exactly. Okay, so as a whole, we have.
Have you got enough screen space?
I think.
Is this still okay?
Yeah. I can move it up a little bit too. This is the one thing I don't love about Zoom is it like the big thing is it blocks your toolbar. And then I got to move the closed caption out of the way for me. Okay, so it looks like as a whole, procedures are defined and used only by specialized personnel, right? That seems to be the case, right? Most of our assistive technology stuff is that. But on the IEP, every single IEP and every single IEP team has to go through and consider what those assistive technology pieces are, right? So the more we can move the needle on that one to where more teams can provide those assistive technology assessments, then we can make that just a lot more efficient. Was there a question or just, okay, no. Okay. On the second question, get a little bit more of a mix. I do love the 666. You could not have planned that better, by the way. Thank you. I know. See, there's always something funny about a presentation, guys. So 50% of us, we have a designated team with knowledge of AT conducts the assessments. We have a couple of teams, a team whose members have direct knowledge of the students. So again, that's probably those of you who are using the IEP team from the student. We have somebody who they have flexible teams formed on the basis of knowledge and needs and environment. And then somebody who said a designated individual with no prior knowledge of the student's assistive needs conducts that assessment. So here's what we do in a state when we get numbers like this. Let's say I'm the one who's put number 1. I'm not calling anybody out. Let's say I'm the one who said, you know what? We have one person who comes out and does these assessments. They don't know anything about the kid. They just come out, they do some stuff, they give us some numbers, and off we go, right? I'm probably not feeling super good about myself when I see like where other people scored. So as a state, what we do is we say, hey, who scored a 4 or 5? What are you doing? Can I have that? Right? So instead of somebody at your school district saying, okay, here's everything I'm going to do to fix that, what we do is we just talk to all the other school districts who are doing better, and we just beg, borrow, and steal, right? Because then I can take that back to my boss and say, hey, guess what? I just improved this. I don't need to tell them where I got it from, right? They don't even ask. If they ask, I tell them it's okay. But that helps us like even out that curve. Okay. On the next one, and this keeps like going down. All AT assessments include functional assessment in the student's customary environment. Again, it looks like a lot of us are doing some of those customary environments, not quite all of them. We do have 11% of the people though, so that's going to be probably how many responses? 2 people, that says right there, that they are considering all of those customary environments. And then we have some people who are still thinking no component of the AT assessment is conducted in any of the students' environments. So again, if that's something you put on there, what we would want to do as we get together as state teams is share that information and steal it from somebody else. Somebody else is going to give it to you. You're not going to really steal it. Okay. AT assessments includes needed trials, and they're done within a reasonable time frame. This one, it looks like as a state, we're doing much better. 44% and 39% are at 3 and a 4. Nobody put in a 1, but some said they're frequently out of compliance with timelines, meaning maybe we did like a permission to test and then like 90 plus days later, we still haven't gotten it done. Those kinds of things. Okay. But the nice thing about that is that it shows me that we're getting students we're figuring out what the students need quickly, right? We're doing it in a reasonable timeline so students aren't just sitting there trying to get by without the assistive technology tools that they need. The recommendations are based on data and about the student's environment and tasks. So again, looks like most of us are using good data to make those decisions. More of us are struggling a little bit more on this one. And then we have 3 teams that are just doing a really good job because they're generally based on data about the student's performance and in those customary tasks. Okay. The other nice thing to do with your IEP teams, again, the AT on the IEP one is much more like school team focused. Are we doing this? Is this is what we're doing on the IEP really what needs to happen for this part? These assessment ones, because there's so many more people involved, usually you don't have quite as much power to fix those. But now that you can know what those areas look like, it makes it a little bit easier to go in and say, hey, if we're at a 3, what do we have to do to get to a 4? So it looks like for our group here, the assessment, clearly documented recommendations. Again, most of us are in that middle range. We've got 4 of us that are doing a pretty good job of documenting those recommendations and getting them out to people pretty quickly. We have 1 person who's crushing it. Raise your hand for a second. Who was that? Go ahead and say it. We did this. Nobody's going to do it. That's okay. Um, and then 11%, so two of us that are documenting includes only the devices, but not about those services. And I will say devices and services is a tough question. Services for assistive technology can include everything from assessment. Assessment is part of a service that can be documented on an IEP. Most schools don't document all of those things because it would be a little bit onerous to keep getting all of those IEPs updated for that information. But they're doing the work and documenting it outside of the IEP. We get a new graph type this time. That's fun. AT needs are reassessed anytime changes in the student environment and or tasks result in the student's needs not being met with the current devices. So it looks like on this one, for the most part, we're struggling a little bit more in that we're doing kind of an annual type of assessment maybe, but not like when those students' needs change quite as often. And then frequently, so people who are doing it as part of their progress reports and then updating that information on an annual basis. Again, that's, every time the IEP comes up, which is a really good time to do it. Okay. See, oh, look, there's our people from all over. You can see all the people who came together. Okay. So how does that feel? Let's go for a little bit of feedback. How does it feel to like be able to go in and like assess yourself? If you're like me, you forgot what you marked by the time we talked about it with the whole group, and you're like, I don't know which group I was in. Does that make sense though, that you can go in, that rubric kind of says, here's where we're at right now. Here's where ideally we want to be. You don't have to be there. There's no, you want to be there. But for me, so I am oftentimes that one person in Davis School District who goes out and does all the assessment piece, like when nobody else can. I will say for me to fix any of those was a really big thing. It was too big for me to do. So it was nice to look at what other districts had done and use some of that. I will say, here's the thing we took and we improved off of this. The biggest thing was there's certain IEPs that require, as part of their eligibility, a more rigorous documentation of assistive technology assessment. So traumatic brain injury, multiple disabilities, and deaf blind, I think, are the three categories. As part of the eligibility, they require documentation of assistive technology assessments considerations. So what we did was we took all of our students who were on that reevaluation cycle, pull them in, and then we send out to the teams, hey, what do we need to look at for this student in order to make sure that assessment happens for them and that their eligibility actually has all the required components? Because what they were doing before that was what most of us would do, is they see that little box on the eligibility that says, did you consider AT? And they'd say, yes, right? But they wouldn't document what that was, because it really is asking for more of a documentation. Okay. Any questions on how to use the quality indicators to improve your assessment piece? Notice that it does not give you, here's how we're going to assess for reading. Here's how we're going to assess for math. Here's how we're going to assess for writing. Here's how we're going to assess for communication. Here's how we're going to assess for executive functioning skills or access. It's not going to give you those pieces. But again, that's one of the nice things about the state groups, is we're going to like pull all of that information into one place. So every team has those, right? Here's the best assessments that we use for those areas. Okay, questions, concerns? Nobody's walked out yet, so I'm feeling okay.
We're trying to look at like when there's some more less random way that some students have an assessment for assistive technology and some don't. Because we have students who our preschools are great, they're using this total language, they're modeling with, and some of these kids just start they're using the classroom iPad, all of a sudden maybe their home health or home SLP got them a device. All of a sudden they have a device, it's box getting checked on their IEPs, but they're 14 and they've never actually had a school assistive technology assessment. So we have kids that fall through the cracks that way, and then other kids that just you know, are using more of like a high influence type of like being right from Google or something, and they don't have an assessment either, and where other kids did because maybe a parent or a teacher like really sought that out. So it doesn't feel like there's like a systematic way of who gets an assessment in the other.
Okay, so I'm going to try and summarize it real quick. And that's where, no, you're good. Mostly so other people can hear and so you can fact check me and see if I've got the question right. So the big thing is like in Davis School District, we have over 12,000 students with IEPs. That's not including 504. Guess what? We are not doing 12,000 assistive technology assessments, right? So some students are getting a more full-fledged assessment. Some are getting assessment light, and some are getting, hey, we just think this is what's best for this kid, right? So we've got kind of a variety of things of what we're doing for assessment. My biggest thing is, how do we define assessment for assistive technology? Speech pathologists, raise your hand for me one more time. How much information can you get out of standardized assessment for language? Quite a bit, right? Like, you know what kind of language they're using, you know usually what kind of receptive skills the student has, you know what parts of speech they're struggling with, what parts of speech they're not struggling with. So a lot of that assessment, that counts as AT assessment too, right? So I'm going to say broaden your definition first. What is the assessment that we're looking at? We're looking at all of the assessment that's already been done as well. And then we're also looking at some more specific assessment. So there are some ways to kind of speed some of those things up. But again, Canyons District, you guys have what, 3 high schools? 6? Man, you guys have grown. I know. There was more because it was when it was just Jordan District. I grew up in that area. So yeah, like I'm gonna guess you have probably 6,000 students on an IEP. Like that's way too many assistive technology assessments that that someone could reasonably go and do. So again, what are some of those tools that you can look at to give teams for some of the more low incident stuff, especially? So you're not going out, if a student has a disability in the area of writing, you're not going out and giving something like the written productivity profile, which is just a comparison of handwriting, keyboarding, speech to text, word prediction, speeds and skills to see like what the most effective way for that student is to write. But you're helping a school team figure out those pieces, right? So I do love the idea of it's not just that assistive technology team, because remember, number one of the worst scores you could get on there was somebody comes out and assesses the kid with no prior knowledge really of this kid. Really, you want it to be the school team that's doing it. So making those more available to them is kind of how we're addressing it, not addressed. Speech pathologist, notice I did not use a past perfect tense of that verb. I did use a present, what was it? Addressing, I used a gerund, right? Speech people, nerds, huh? People are like, I've been out of school for too long. I don't know what a gerund is. It's an ing verb. Okay. I'm not a speech pathologist, but I do love a good speech pathologist joke. If you need to know my favorite one, I have to tell you afterwards. I cannot tell you in public. It's a pretty good speech pathology joke. Okay. So yeah, so that's how we address like, how do we improve that? And again, there's a lot of different measures here. You're not going to improve all of them. You're going to take like what's most beneficial and easiest steps first, and do those. My personal hobby is that I read too many books about and do too many things about is sort of like cities and how they function. So anybody in here ever heard of strong towns? No, this is not my brand of nerds. But there's one person. See, there's always my people somewhere, right? They have just a simple process that they use to improve cities. The first one is just humbly observe. So we go out and observe all the time, right? We just go see what's going on sometimes, or the classroom teacher does. And then you say, find what the struggle is, pick the easiest thing that you can do, and then go do that thing, and then repeat. So observe, find the thing that you can do, the easiest thing you can do that thing, and then repeat the cycle. And that's the way assistive technology assessments work really well too. We fix one little thing, then we fix the next little thing, and then we fix the next little thing until we have the big thing fixed. And a lot of times when we say, I know district level especially, they go, no, that's an assistive technology assessment. We're going to send out a whole specialized team to do that. Your data actually isn't going to be as good. So, okay. All right. So we have time to go through one more. So let me go back to our vote. So we have a three-way tie. So this is where hand raising is going to come into place, you guys. Consideration of AT needs, AT in the IEP, or evaluation of the effectiveness. So we're just going to go back of the napkin, how this feels. Consideration of AT needs, if you want that one to be the next one we talk about. No. Yeah, well, okay, so we got one vote for consideration. AT in the IEP. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hands. And I know not everybody's going to vote. It's okay. I wouldn't do it either. Evaluation of effectiveness of AT. That is just, I think that one won. Sorry, everybody who wanted AT and the IEP. So let's go to evaluation of effectiveness. So I'm going to go back to slide deck. And we're going to go right here. Yeah, I knew there was just going to be one that I didn't mark the little box on. And I am happy because when I did these are all copies of the originals. But for some reason on the originals, something kept coming up as other on every single one of them. And there was no other option. But okay. Everybody got it pulled up? Everybody that wants to? No, there's some people in the back. I know, people in the back. You got to have a better phone. Does that help? Sorry, I probably did that right as you guys were about to like actually get it. Anybody not got it? Anybody struggling? No, there's still a few phones out. We'll get there. So this one, I'm just going to talk about why people get logged in. Effectiveness of AT is a hard one, right? Like we do so much work to get the IEP completed and done that like actually going back and like checking on the effectiveness of individual parts of it sometimes is really hard to do, like even just as a teacher or as a school team, and especially as a district level. It's a hard thing to kind of go back and look at. So let's go to here. Evaluation, implementation. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's this one. Is it this one? The responses. Nope, I think I pulled up the wrong one. Or people haven't hit submit yet. That could also be it. Assessment, including evaluation of effectiveness. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to go to preview. I'm going to fill it out with you. So team members share clearly defined responsibilities to ensure that data are collected, evaluated, and interpreted by capable and credible team members. Do we have a good way of like actually keeping track of this data? Most of them in my district, most of it's by some team members, usually like a case manager, but that's the appropriate person. Data are collected on specific student achievement that has been identified by the team and is related to one or more of the IEP goals. And I'm going to give us a 4 on that one because most teams are identifying specific student behaviors, reading, writing, communication, etc. Evaluation of effectiveness includes quantitative and qualitative measurements of the students' changes. I do have a few teachers who still write in, so-and-so is a nice young man with a pleasant demeanor, and then give me some data. So that's qualitative, right? Just kidding. But most of us are saying like the student feels pretty good about it. They're using it, like that qualitative piece. So I'm going to give us a quantitative and qualitative. I'm going to give us a 4 on that one. And I'm going to go to data are collected to provide teams with a means for analyzing student achievement and identifying supports and barriers that influence. I'm going to say we're not doing a great job of analyzing our data. Don't tell anyone yet. Don't tell my boss, they're not here today. Evaluation of effectiveness is a dynamic and ongoing process that is reviewed periodically. I'd give us a 4 because I'm going to include our progress reports. So every term, somebody's looking at that. Data are collected to provide teams with a means of analyzing student achievement and identifying supports and barriers. And I will say for certain categories like AAC users, our data looks different than it does for reading and writing. So that's the other piece that makes this a little bit hard. Superficially analyzed. Changes are made to the student's IEP. What do I want to put here? I'm going to put a 3 for us. Evaluation of effectiveness is a dynamic and responsive ongoing process that is reviewed periodically. I'm going to go with annual on that one because this is where we're best is annual. We have some outliers, but most of it's that. All right. I'm going to hit submit. Oh, nope. Oh, sorry. Wherever it says it's required, like on number 4, totally my bad. I know. Here's the thing. What did I say about this? We're going to make small incremental improvements. We're not going to expect perfection right off the bat. We're going to be kind to people. I'm taking that for what it's worth. Okay. So I'm going to pull up that and we're going to watch some numbers come in. Now, if you want to do it just for fun, just to make somebody feel bad, a whole group of you should put like 5s for all of them. And then just be like, oh, how come you guys aren't getting 5s? Because what I'm hoping though is that you can see that like this with your school team or with your district is going to be a very different conversation than a big widespread group of people, right? And again, I think that the IEP team, like as a school team, taking that survey on how we're doing at addressing assistive technology on the IEP is actually really probably the most useful one I've seen teams use. They really appreciate saying, oh, it's clear where we're putting assistive technology and what it's doing for the student. And then that also influences how we know how effective it is because it's well documented on that IEP. I'm going to. Still. Dun, dun, dun. 100%. And hit refresh one more time. The thing I always tell people when we're doing computer stuff is the refresh button is like the marriage counselor button for your computer and your internet. It makes them talk like perfectly every time, except for right now. Let's go back to questions. You know what? Hold on. Watch this. I could have messed this up multiple ways. I was reading the same questions you were looking at, right? Okay. Show more. Bum, bum, bum. No, I don't think I did this one. Nope. Hold on. I made copies, so I may have opened up, like I may have filled out mine, but not the copy version. recent. One, two, three. It was number 4, right? Evaluation was the first one we did. Here, let me refresh this page. So that was our assessment one. Here's our consideration one. Oh, update sync in Excel. Is that the right one? Microsoft Forms of course updated. And so they're updating how that works with the old form. I'm ready to update. Update and sync.
You do have 5 responses.
I do have 5 responses, so okay. Was it number 5? Evaluation of effectiveness. Here we go. Again, 2 copies named exactly the same thing. Here we go. Thanks for your help. I appreciate it. This is a group effort. Like I said, it's been a hard week, you guys. It's been a hard week. Well, doing great on what? Sorry. I just wanted to just repeat it for me. Actually, I heard you the first time. It's been a hard week. Everybody needs a little positive reinforcement. Okay, so notice on this one, wow, we are a little more all over the place, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So last time we had kind of bigger chunks, like everybody was kind of doing things the same. This one we're breaking it probably out a little bit more. And I'm going to say usually that's because you're considering it more from like your school location place, right? Rather than as a district. So it looks like we have the responsibilities for data collection or evaluation are not really defined. Let me ask you a question if you put that, and you don't have to answer out loud. If the goal includes the assistive technology, so let's say it's a language goal for a student using AAC, are we collecting data on that? And is it defined who would collect that data? So typically it's going to be speech pathologist at a bare minimum, classroom teacher as well, because language is being used throughout. So you might have more clear definitions than you're thinking of initially. Sorry, you can't go back and fix that data right now, but I just want to probably tell you that most of you probably are. It just hasn't been discussed. It's one of those things that's just sort of understood, okay? But we have a few teams. Now we have one team that responsibilities for data collection, evaluation, and interpretation are consistently shared by team members. I know for when we do evaluations, like capital big E evaluations versus little e evaluations, we're usually a little more clear with teams about what we want them to collect and figure out because we have more questions. Little e evaluations, we usually just assume it's part of the goal and let them go, okay? Data are collected on specific student achievement that has been identified by the team and is related to one or more goals. So again, where it looks like most of us are right in the middle there. We have a couple of teams that are doing team identify specific student behaviors related to IEP tasks and generally collects the data. And then we have a few teams that they're not quite specific enough to identify how that assistive technology is doing that, right? Okay. Oh, look, and people, because we had to write in something on that one. Yeah. I like that. Okay. I will say if you use these forms when you do them as a group, it is nice to have people's thoughts to go back to because I don't remember what I put or why. So I usually try and put in the notes. Evaluation of effectiveness includes quantitative and qualitative. So it looks like most of us are doing it's not based on performance, but rather on subjective opinion. but they're doing a good job, you guys. They're doing a good job. That's a good opinion to have, right? Yeah, I think the data on a lot of them are pretty squishy, especially like AAC. If anybody disagrees, go ahead and shout out a different category. Just because they're so broad, right? There's so many things going on with those students that it's hard to pinpoint what the one thing is. The secret that I learned a long time ago, though, is whoever keeps the data gets to be right and take all the credit. So if you're the one keeping the data, you get to say, look, so here's a quick example. I had a student, this was a long time ago, so we were using a system that we try to never use anymore, more commonly known as a picture exchange communication system, copyright. And the student went from having like 0 things that he could request to 4. And so I said, look, here's my data. The student has a 400% increase in their language. And I patted myself on the back pretty hard. I was just kidding. Um, but the data really does allow you to like say, hey, here's the difference we're making, and we can take credit for that, right? We'll tell more stories about why that wasn't true later. Okay, so data are collected to provide teams with a means to analyze and analyzing student achievement and identifying supports and barriers. So it looks like a lot of us have like 0 data, or not a lot, but some of us. Again, that's okay, because what you'd want to do is say, okay, how do we collect some more data so that we know whether or not this is working? And then we grab data sheets from other people or data collection system. By the way, in case you can't tell, I do love Microsoft Forms and Google Forms for data collection. I know, right? Like you can collect student data the same way. Like you can set up one form for the kid, enter in their stuff every single time, progress report time, boom, here's your report. It's all done for you. Has all your data, and usually with a graph, right? Yeah, I love Microsoft and Google Forms for collecting data on students. You can actually have a page of QR codes for all their goals even. So you can just do it from your phone or your iPad. Just pro tip, that's all I'm saying. Since we're talking about data and how effective it is. This one, it looks again like data are superficially analyzed. People are looking at things, but we need to look at it a little bit closer, okay? Evaluation for effectiveness is an ongoing process. We're kind of split on that lower end of things, but thanks for these 3 teams that pulled up our scores as a whole for saying that we are doing more of it and that it's ongoing. Data are collected to provide teams with the means for analyzing student achievement and identifying supports and barriers that influence AT to use to determine what changes are needed, if any. Again, looks like we're mostly middle of the road. Some of us are collecting it, but we're not really analyzing it. Why? Because we're not putting it in a Google form. It's, again, so easy, so easy. Okay. And then how often are we making changes? We're making some changes. This one that almost came out like we could 3, 4. We needed 2 more people to put it in the blue so we could have the perfect graph for this one. Okay. I'm going to stop going through them because I think you get the idea, right? So again, back to all of those categories, and I'm going to go back to slide deck with all of those. And then I'm going to try and move this so I can make it just a little bit bigger. So those rubrics, and if you're not a forms person, there's paper rubrics. You can do it on paper. Paper rubrics are also self-graphing. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. It's 10 minutes, and you know what? We're only going to take a couple of those. Why? Because the sooner you get out of here, the sooner you are in the lunch line for whatever you're doing for lunch. But again, taking those matrices, figuring out where you're at, and looking at one small thing to improve. Observe, make an improvement, and then go and repeat that process over and over and over. Those small incremental changes really do. Number one, if anybody comes to you and says, hey, what are you doing? You can say, look, I'm making all of these improvements. You don't have to, you can use like I did for the student. That's a 100% increase in where we were. We were at a 1, now we're a 2. That's a 100% increase, right? But it's a nice way to look at those. If you are wondering who on your school team should be part of that state group that's coming in and doing those things, I'm just going to say I'm going to re-invite you people to come and join us every month. Because when we go through it together as team leaders, we really do give some nice feedback to each other, and everybody walks away with something that they need. Okay, that is all I have for you today. I promise the next session, this was my boring session. The next session is going to be much more fun. I'm just going to put in a plug. You'll see the Xboxes sitting in the front of the room. We're just going to play video games next session after lunch. So, but we are going to make it a little extra fun. So even if you're not a gamer, we're going to use the assistive controls and the helps and all of those things so that you can actually be really successful. So, okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your effort. And appreciate everybody's mastery of Microsoft Forms.